Firefox OS. What is it? It's web applications for your phone. And the first phone that came out was this one, CTE. And what it is Mozilla's answer for Android or iOS or Windows Phone. And it's developed with the normal Firefox browser, and you just write applications that run inside this browser and the SpiderMonkey virtual or JavaScript virtual machine. The next generation of phones came pretty quickly, and the reason for this is that Firefox OS just builds on Android technology. So all the phones that were already prepared for using Android phones could just easily be ported to Firefox. So here we have some geek phones. LG is developing one, Huawei, Alcatel, and possibly Sony will also develop phones. They haven't decided that yet. It's a management decision, so it takes time. So here's the home screen of the Firefox phone. Here's some apps added, but you can see all the normal apps that you expect. We have the phone app, we have a chat app, we have contacts. Here's the phone app, and everything here is just HTML and CSS. And every app is actually an iframe running inside the Gecko runtime. Here's contacts. Looks pretty good. And even the status bar up here is also JavaScript and CSS. Music player also works pretty well, and it's using the HTML audio APIs. Notifications, this is for sending notifications and receiving notifications from all the apps that are installed. So it's similar to what you have on both Android and iOS. Mozilla is just stealing everything they can, which is, I guess, the proper way to do it. And here's an example of games, Galacticans 2. And this is actually on the Mozilla Marketplace. So this is an app you have to install. And this is how the Marketplace looks. It's just a web page. And depending on what type of app you have, you just register your app and then you can host it yourself, or you actually upload a zip file to the Marketplace. And yeah, you can see all the usual suspects like Facebook and Twitter. They already have apps for Firefox OS, even though that nobody uses Firefox OS. And the reason for this is that it's so easy to actually develop an application if you already have a web application. Let's have a quick look at the architecture. And then in the next slide, I'll go into it a little bit more. But there are 3 layers of Firefox OS. It's Gonk, which is basically the Linux runtime, or the Linux distribution with all the device drivers that are mostly Android device drivers. Then we have the Gecko runtime, which is the Mozilla browser. And inside that we have web APIs, we have some credential management, and the actual runtime environment. And then the top layer is called Gaia, and that's where all the applications are running. and everything, including the home screen, is a web application. So here's a more in-depth version of the architecture. We have here we see the device operating system. So it's just a distribution of Linux. And we have all the drivers here: Wi-Fi, audio, video, power management. Everything comes from Android, or the device drivers for Android. But instead of having a Java virtual machine on top of it, you have the Gecko runtime. And inside the Gecko runtime, we have APIs, web APIs, and these are specific for Firefox OS. So we have contacts, settings, web telephony, Bluetooth, system XHR is for sending requests for packaged apps, where you can send where you're not constrained by where you download it from, where your origin is from, and yeah, a bunch of other things. I'll go into some more detail on some of the APIs later on, and these are all called the Open Web APIs. In reality, it's just Mozilla implementing them right now. I think Chrome OS may start using them too, but currently it's only Mozilla. But since Mozilla everything is open source, they call them the Open APIs. And then this little spot here, that's the HTML5 APIs, and this is actually a lot bigger than it looks. We'll look at that some more. Then the top layer is the Gaia. That is the UI, all the applications, the home screen, like I said before. And we have system apps. We have some certified apps. We'll talk about the security model and the permission models too later. And some utility libraries and building blocks. And here is where you're also hosting your own applications. And they come in basically two forms. You have hosted apps, which are hosted like a normal web application. And then you have packaged apps, which are zip files that are installed. So the zip files are much more like a normal iOS application or an Android application. It's actually installed and it's managed by the Firefox Update Manager. Sorry?
It's more like Linux.
Yeah, not real. It's just a zip file basically. So it's not a real Debian package or anything like that. But yeah, all package managers work in similar ways. It's a metadata and then there's the content. And then there's also some JS libraries that can be used. And since everything is open sourced, it's also really easy to reuse the code that's being used for building the built-in apps. But you cannot just reuse it. You cannot call into other apps. You have to go into the code and take the code and deploy it with your own application. Okay. Yeah, I think that's about it here. So, the HTML5 APIs. If you let it expand a little, there's a lot in it. And since most people here, I assume, are familiar with web development, you're probably very familiar with most of these. Some of them make more sense in a phone applications when you can go offline, etc. And that's like we have web storage, we have index database for storage, we have not the caching. I was looking for app cache. It should be here somewhere. I can't find it. Sorry? Yeah. Audio, video, if you're developing anything that has to do like an album application or a video application. Yeah, a lot of things here. And web workers are also, of course, interesting if you want to do some background processing. And many of these are not. So these calendar API, animation timing, device orientation, they're still work in progress. And you cannot really rely on them at the moment. So why should you start doing phone applications in web technology? And this is the reason. Responsive design. All the phones now look totally different from what they used to do. They used to be similar and have the same screen size and not be very usable at all. But now a phone or actually a communication device come in so many forms, and web technology is the absolutely easiest way to get a UI experience that is good across all the different variations. And responsive design and media queries, everything just works on Firefox OS. So it's really easy to just deploy different variants. So how do I get started with Firefox OS? The first thing to do is to download Firefox, and inside Firefox there is a new version of Firefox. You have an app manager, and the app manager will allow you to start up and run a simulator like this, but it will also let you run on a device if you connect a device. And with the app manager you can also debug, so you can get up the normal Firefox debugger tools. And unfortunately you cannot use Firebug, so you're limited to the Firefox tools. But it works decently. It combined with some other tools where you can actually access the log that it's on the phone, it's a good experience to develop phones. I'll show you this. Yeah, maybe I should do that now. Yeah. So here we have the Firefox Marketplace. I can just demo it. I'm gonna search for something. What's that popular game now? Floppy Bird? Flobby. $20 Floppy Birds already. Yeah. So there's a few apps already on the App Store or on the Marketplace. Here's an application that we developed for. We just had a workshop where we tried out Firefox OS a while ago, and it just accesses a weather API and gets the weather, and you can choose to make something a favorite or search for something else. What? Lund, maybe? And then get some more information. And this, we did this in, I don't know, maybe 6 hours I think it took. We were 2 people. And we tried to reuse some of the Gaia look. So we stole the UI components from the Gaia code base. But this is running in a browser. But if I want to run it in a Firefox device, I go to Web Developer and open App Manager. And then I can just type in the URL of it here and add it as a hosted app. And I already added it here, so I can detect it, and then I'll start a simulator. And there's one for Firefox OS 1.02 or 1.2. There's also one for Firefox 1.3, but it's still beta and it's fairly buggy, so I prefer to use this one. And now we have a simulator running. And here's the icon for the Firefox weather. And it wants to use my locations. Okay, share. And then at the bottom it shows my location here, and all the others are, I assume, favorites. Yeah. No, I didn't. I don't even know where it is, actually. Kuala Kapuas. Yep. So, but if I want to debug it, all I have to do is just, maybe I should bring it down and debug. So if now I just have the normal Firefox tools here. I'll go into main where I have a click handler. So if I before I start a search, what elephant? I don't know. Okay, and the debugger stops right here, and we can inspect the values. Okay, let's step over that one. So now I have the value elephant, and then I can just continue, I assume. And it finds Visby. So I don't know why. I assume. I guess I like elephants in Visby. So yeah, that was just a quick demo. You can also go into and inspect the different styles and do profiling and inspect the page. And as you see, it's just a standard HTML page. And you could also just enter things into the console and it updates. Okay. And if, one more thing, if I disconnect here, it says down here, no device found, plug a device in. So if I plug in a device, it just automatically detects, and I'm able to deploy it to the telephone or to just run it and debug it also on the phone. So it's pretty good. Sorry? Yeah, any Android device if you're willing to do some tweaking with makefiles, yes. And you have to download it yourself and compile it yourself currently. Okay. So, how do I make a web app? If I have a normal web application and I want to turn it into a Firefox application, all I have to do is write a manifest file. And it should be called manifest. It doesn't really matter what it's called as long as it provides the proper MIME type. And if you click on it and it has the proper MIME type, Firefox will try to install it as an app. And here's what's required. Not everything here is actually required. Name, description, icons are required. That's all that's required. Everything else is optional. Launch path I wouldn't need here at all because it's the default that's set. But if I have a hosted solution and my initial file is a bit further down, then I need to type the full path here. And this is also where I can add permissions. So in my case, I try to access a geolocation. And I need to declare that. Even though you don't have to declare it in a normal browser, you have to declare it for the Firefox phone.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Is it alerted to the user, or?
Yeah, it's still alerted to the user even though I add it here. But it is alerted. You saw when I first started the application, I clicked in allow to use geolocation. And I think it only prompts currently for things that you have explicitly declared in the app cache or in the app manifest. So it's really easy. It's just you put this parallel to your index HTML file. You just put name, description, and an icon that will fit, and then someone can just install your application on their phone, and it will work when they're online, because you don't get offline capabilities for free. Oh, here are some more options that you have in the app manifest. There are so many, so I didn't bother write anything about all of them. But activities is interesting because that's how apps communicate between each other. What else? Yeah, and then it's not so very interesting. There's permissions, and some of them are only pertinent to packaged applications. But activities and permissions are important. So, if you want to install the app, you have to do it by calling an API. And you can call install or get installed and check install. So, if you want to put a button on your website that says install in Firefox OS, you just make a call to check install and see if someone has already installed it. And if they haven't installed it, then you put a button up, and when they click that button, you just call navigator moz apps install, and you give it the manifest file that you wrote before. And then it will be installed.
Can it be, if it is installed?
Yep.
It returns true, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you run it? Or it will not be.
If it's installed, then you just get the icon on your phone, so you can click it. Otherwise, you can still run it in the browser because it's just a web application. But if you want to have it on a home screen, like a shortcut, basically, then you click install. It's installed. Basically, downloads the app manifest, and then you click it, and then it's running as an application more than as a web app. So here's an example of how to write the code. So you just write moz apps install, and you can, if you care about it, you can check for success or you can check for failure, and then you can do something. But usually you don't really want to do, you want to detect the error if it happens. But if it's success, okay, then it's installed, maybe a notification. Nothing more than that. So app cache. Who uses app cache? One. App cache is actually fairly easy. It has a lot of quirks, and it doesn't always work the way you want it to. But it works. And what you do is just provide a file. It's called, it can be called anything, but it should have the header cache manifest. It doesn't need this, but there's a problem with app cache. It doesn't detect if the file has a new date or anything like that, a new modification time. It only detects if it's actually changed. So the way to change or to get the application to update the app cache is to actually change the file. And there's the best way I know is to actually put in the date of the time right now. So then I know what the modification time is for my application. And then you just have a list of files, and they have to be explicitly listed, all the files. And this is something you generate with a script at install time or deploy time. Or you can just hand code it if you want to. And network is resources that has to have a network connection. And usually this is star, because everything else is provided in the cache. So everything, all requests that are not in the cache automatically default to network. And then there's also another option here. You can add a fallback. So for things that require online connection, you can provide a default file that you just include in the cache. So when you're not connected, you could just, okay, show, no, you need a connection to access this feature. And then all you have to do when you have this app cache is to just include the manifest and in the HTML as an attribute. And this automatically makes your application available offline, unless you have a service that is required for it to work. And there are a lot more things to app cache. You can detect when it has updated in the background, because every time you go to a page, it will check if the app cache is updated, and if it is updated, it will download in the background, so you won't even see it. And if you want the user to be notified that the app cache has changed, you have to detect this download. But often you don't even have to care about that. It's just downloaded in the background, and then next time they start the application, they will get the new version. So another API, geolocation. This is actually a part of the HTML5 standard. This part is where you can just get current position. But this part here is an extension that's added by the open web APIs. And this is where you can watch the position. So if you're out running or you want to write the next running app, this is how you would do it. Then you can just watch for the position, and you can just continually get updates every time the position changes. Device storage. This is also Firefox specific. It gives you access to SD cards or hard drives or whatever is provided by the platform you're using. So here's I want to get the device storage for pictures, and then I can just enumerate them, and then I'll get the cursor. So we're back to yes, database programming again. And yeah, then we can just iterate over this cursor and bring out all the pictures.
Do I have to have my app installed, or would this work from any website?
No, for this to work, you have to have a privileged app. So it has to be installed. And it also has, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about what privilege means, but yes. And it's the same for these. Unfortunately, I would like if these would make very interesting applications, I think. To send an SMS, you just, the simple way, you just send the number and the message, and that's if the message is shorter than, 160 characters. If it's longer, you have to do a little dance where you're splitting the message into pieces and sending each piece by themselves, and then it can be reassembled again. And here's how to get a single message. You just get message, I'll get the latest message. So it's fairly simple to use for just basic use cases, but if you want to do something more general, it's more difficult. For example, web MMS. We have some strange XML dialect for creating MMS messages. And then you just send them with send MMS. And telephony, it gets really interesting when you can actually write applications that can access the phone. You can do some really cool stuff. You're at the same level as the hardware vendors when you can do this. But also here you have to have a certified app. It's a privileged app with extra credentials. So here you get the MOS telephony, and you can check if the phone is muted. You can check if the speaker is enabled. And you could also place a call. Just dial a number. When it's connected, you can do something with it. And when it's disconnected, you use something and you just hang it up like that. So, permissions then. So this is the area where you're free to develop applications. They're hosted applications. You can install hosted applications, and they're still categorized as hosted applications. And you have access to radio, alarm, storage, audio, push. You need to require these privileges, but you can get them for any application that is just hosted on any website. If you move over to privileged and to certify, then you have to package your application and submit it to the Mozilla Marketplace for now. And then they will check it for certain variants, so it's not hostile to the telephone. And especially if it's certified, I haven't even seen a certified app on the marketplace as of now. But here is where a lot of the interesting stuff happens, where you get access to the device, storage, and the contacts. And a lot more interesting stuff happens here when you can detect Bluetooth connections, Wi-Fi connections, send SMS, access to the power of the phone. But as of now, I don't think it will be possible to develop applications like that unless you're counting on actually being a subcontractor to a phone developing company. And finally then, the content security policy. So for hosted apps, the content security policy is do whatever you want to do. Do whatever you do on with a normal web application. For privileged and certified apps, you can only download source code from self. This is actually doesn't really matter that much, but everything has to be packaged into the app. You can't download source code from a site, so it makes the update process a lot more difficult than we're used to with normal web development. And the same goes with style sheets. Everything has to be inside the applications. So if you wanted to change, say, your theme for Easter, you want to make everything yellow, it's not possible because then you have to release a whole new application. While you have a hosted application, okay, I'll just change whatever I want because it just works as a web application. And then there's one more big problem with this. It's that eval is not allowed, and eval most people don't want to use. But the problem is that eval is used in third-party applications. So if you want to use Knockout, if you want to use Angular, they're using eval all the time. And there are workarounds for this. You can compile your code, you can download special versions that are made without compilation that has worse performance. So I don't really see why they have made this choice, because it's my packaged application, so I should be able to use it. But it is a problem, and we've had to make a few tweaks to get this to work properly with frameworks. Mozilla's, all their applications are just vanilla JS. They're not using any third-party MVC frameworks or anything. So that was it. You have any questions? I'll tell you about this comic. I like this comic. It says, "Society for asking stupid questions." And then the guy says, "Excuse me, is this a society for asking stupid questions?"